Oh, good. The mics are on.
Yay. Hey.
Hey.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to All the Things, the show where we talk about all things related to God, life, and the Bible from our kind of standpoint of today and today's culture. I didn't do that right.
No.
I should probably just read it. This is the show where we discuss all things related to God, life, the Bible, and real life. Yes. I don't think I did that right either. But anyway, we're not doing it again.
Should I try it?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm Krista Bontrager.
Yes.
Also known as Theology Mom. And this is a show where we discuss the cultural issues of our day in light of the Christian worldview.
There you go. It doesn't say that on that paper.
Right here.
Oh, maybe that part. I missed that. I'm Monique. And yes, today we are going to talk about all things related to God, life, and the Bible in light of our current cultural worldview.
Yes. And Abby's not here today. She ran off to the beach with her friends.
Yes.
So there's no one to amuse us while painting or in the chat room. But Bob's here, our official button pusher of all the things with a fancy wipe from the 80s. That was very nice. And wow. That was very fancy. And if you would like to really help support this ministry, this is the best way to do that is just hit that share button right now and help spread the word on social media. So that's a good thing to do.
It is a good thing. Hey, we're going to talk about another way to support and one of the sponsors of all the things.
We have a new sponsor.
Yes, a new sponsor.
A sponsor.
Yes. It's so cool. Family 210.
There's a clothing line that my husband has been working on launching, and we wanted to let people know about it. It's a Christian clothing line that he's been working on some designs. And maybe, Bob, you could just tell people real quick what the 210 is about.
The 210 refers to Ephesians 2:10. We are God's masterpiece, from the NLT translation. I like that. We are God's masterpiece. And so that's what the 210 refers to. And so, just Christian-themed T-shirts, some creative designs, some ideas I've always had for quite a while. I thought maybe interesting T-shirt. And that's just kind of what we're doing there.
Very cool. So it's a very tangible way to help support us and get something on the other end.
Yeah, and become part of the family.
That's right.
Yes.
Become part of the family. We should start wearing some of those on the show.
I think so.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Anything interesting happen in your week?
It was hot. I didn't like that.
Oh, that's the best part of my week.
I know.
The very best part.
We couldn't be more opposite.
Basically.
We're opposite on so many things, and so especially temperature.
Anything else?
Yeah, I think just reflecting a lot on the continuing developments we talked about last week on the show about Benny Hinn and him trying to distance himself from the prosperity gospel. There were a couple more interviews published this week that I watched on YouTube with Benny Hinn, and I think we had the right take last week, is give him some grace, give him some time, let him sort it out. It seems like this is something the Lord's been working with him on for a couple of years now. So I'm taking still at face value, but people can go catch that show. And I've also been reflecting a lot on our interview last week on capitalism with Dr. Mike Gurney. Mike. Oh, gosh. So, but we do want to encourage people to go check out the replay. You can catch it on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or Spotify, whatever your favorite platform is.
Sounds good.
Yes.
Sounds good.
So you're going to do the rundown?
I can do the rundown. Nothing really interesting happened in my week. I'll just go ahead and throw that in there.
Okay. Anyway, well, you seem tired, but your lipstick's killing it.
I'm just doing my best. Thanks.
It's very fall.
Yes, I'm going to step into that. I'm not really a fan of fall. Nothing interesting happened in my week. Thanks, in case anybody out there in the world was wondering. I don't know. I probably am tired. I am taking a ballet class. That is interesting for me. And yes, it's really just working me out.
Oh, we already have some questions coming in. Rhyme His Songs says she's excited about the show tonight, hoping to glean some wisdom from the show. She's got some 11th graders in her life that are unchurched.
Yes.
So that'll be good. And She wants to know what AirDrop is. Those of you who watched our promo video on Facebook a few hours ago heard Monique's story about AirDrop. She wants to know what AirDrop is.
And AirDrop is just a way to send media, videos, pictures to another phone. And it's particular. I don't even know if I can say the brand of phone, I guess. I don't want to.
Sure.
Okay. So like iPhone to iPhone.
Oh, don't say that brand.
Oh, what?
I'm just kidding.
You see how they come for me? So I can send a video or a picture or something else, a note or something like that from my phone.
Now you're gonna have to tell a story because people didn't watch the promo video. They're not gonna know what you're saying.
Okay, so what had happened was I was in class and a classmate asked me, because I was videotaping the routine because we're going to be quizzed on this specific routine.
She was in ballet class.
I was in ballet and I was taking a recording of the routine so we can practice at home. And a girl walked up and said, hey, can you AirDrop me the video? And I was like, sure. And so when you go to send the video, different names of people who have on their iPhones and the AirDrop specifically on their iPhones turned on, then all of those people will pick up. So then I could have sent it to anybody, but this person, the girl's, her picture came up with her name, but then Satan came up and I was like, oh Jesus, no, Satan. I don't want to AirDrop nothing to Satan. But Satan was there just taking the ballet class with us. I don't know necessarily who it is.
Somebody named their phone Satan?
Yeah, it could be their name, but I don't judge. If you name yourself Satan,
you might need Jesus.
You might need Jesus. You might, but there's grace, and we'll walk a road with you. I'm gonna ask Jane about that. Jane, how do you respond to people who name themselves Satan? I don't know.
Wait, we haven't introduced
yes, we haven't introduced you.
Now we just have some voice coming. All right, we're just.
Jesus, is that you?
This is a professional show. We're in our living room here. Come on, let's have some
Maybe
decorum.
it's Satan. He could be French. You never know. Ooh, we Satan.
All right.
No, that's horrible. Yes. Okay. Anyway, we're gonna do the rundown of the show, and if you are watching, I am sorry that we have gone aloof.
Okay, here it is.
Astray. Okay, so we are going to be talking to Jane Pantig. She works with a ministry called Ratio Christi, and they are an evangelistic ministry. Yeah, I said that right. Thanks. And so what she does is she goes out to different campuses, college campuses, and has just open conversations with willing participants. She told me, and I'm not going from this because I thought it was really cool. One of the things that she told me when we met is that like sometimes they'll just have a sign like, got a question? Like, no, don't come up with me with your random questions. But she's gifted in just talking to people. I am not that gifted. So I think she's in the right field. But it'll be interesting to hear what the worldview is of people who are currently attending college and in that like 19 to 20-some-year-old.
Yeah, maybe even down a little bit, 15, 16.
Yeah.
So, and then we're going to have the tweet of the week.
Yes, the tweet of the week, I think, is quite perplexing and interesting.
I love it.
You thought it was funny, and I was just like, I don't understand. But yes.
No, I think it's so cool.
We'll have the tweet of the week. And please join us in our chat box, either on YouTube or you can message us on Facebook. You can send your questions there. And yes, let's get going.
Yeah, well, let's get Jane in here. I'm just checking our chat to see what we've got here. Okay. All right, let's get Jane on. There she is. Jane Pantig. Welcome.
Hello.
Wait, hold on.
Take a sip of my water here out of this wee cup
you
here.
got the Women in Apologetics mug.
There
Yes.
Yes, represent well. Yes.
Repping that. That's good. So let's talk a little bit with Jane about Gen Z, as they're called. It's because this is kind of I did some research. This is the generation of people after the millennials, which you're a millennial. Mm-hmm. I'm a Gen Xer, and Gen Z are those born from the mid 1990s through the early 2000s.
Okay.
So these kids are in college, a little past college, but what I think is interesting about them is they're kind of living mostly in a post 9/11 reality, the internet, the smartphone culture, And a lot of us that are my age have kids now that are in this category, or many of my older friends have grandkids in this category. So I thought it'd be great to bring Jane on and talk about how to reach some of these people.
Yeah.
So Jane, help us get to know you a little bit. Tell us a little bit about your background and journey to faith.
All right. Well, I grew up as a cultural Catholic. My parents are from the Philippines, and so that's just kind of something that's part of the culture. And so I grew up in the Catholic Church, baptized, communion, confirmation, and in college, something really changed amongst my family. My dad, my younger brother, and my mom had become believers while I was away at college. And so I would come home from college and we were going to churches that weren't Catholic. And I was like, what's going on here? I thought we were Catholic. So was a little confused by that, but I went with them. Actually really enjoyed the music and the message that pastors would share. But, I was in college living my life and I was like, hey, maybe I'll just get into this when I'm older. And so that was my freshman year. And then by my senior year, I had become a believer. And so what had happened is my mom and my younger brother invited me to this youth conference where I heard the gospel for the first time. I don't ever recall hearing it growing up in the Catholic Church, but at that moment, I knew where I was in my life was because of my sin. And I repented and went up to this altar call, and my life completely changed after that. So that's what happened to me.
That's very cool. And I think that it's interesting to me that your parents actually became Christians first. They were adult converts, and then you kind of came along later. That's an interesting twist, because sometimes people go away to college and change worldviews while they're at college. But for you, you came home and your parents had kind of changed.
Yeah. I think it's a blessing that way too, because sometimes when you become the first believer in your family, it's really hard. So kind of was a hard thing for all of us together.
Yeah. So what was then kind of the step that led you to doing apologetics?
Oh yeah. So I was a bio major, and I quickly found out how hostile people were towards people who believed in God. And so I was like, what did I get myself into? And I was actually taking an evolution class at the time. And my friend in that class was an atheist. And he's like, well, you believe in God now. Why are you taking this class? And at the time, I really didn't know what the positions Christians had. I just knew they were kind of against evolution. I was like, well, I need to know both sides. And so, I had a pastor who had introduced me to apologetics. And Rabbi Zacharias was one of those people. And I was like, wow, this Christian's articulate and wise and smart, and I want to be like him. So that's how I got into apologetics. And it's just really helped me become competent in my faith, and also has helped me to share my faith with people.
Now, you went through the apologetics program at Biola quite a while ago, though, now, right?
Yeah, I can't believe it's been that long. Yes, quite a while. We won't say what year.
Okay.
I'm with you. I am with you. I hear you.
But really, you were such, I think, kind of a trailblazer in that you were on the younger end of the age spectrum, and you were really trying to wrestle through these things. How did you get interested in bringing apologetics to college campuses?
Oh, it was really interesting. So about the time I was going to graduate from Biola, I was getting emails from the Biola department about an organization called Ratio Christi. And they were looking for, people graduating from the program to go out to the university and to do apologetics and evangelism. And I thought that was really cool. But at the time, I had some student loans, and I didn't think I could just volunteer all my life away to that. And then I got another email saying, hey, we're hiring. And I was like, oh, they're going to pay people to do this? And they responded with, well, you got to raise money. And I was like, oh, wow. Well, that's kind of hard. But the Lord took me through that. And I'm in my 9th year with Ratio Christi now.
Wow, that's awesome. And so you're a home missionary, right?
Yeah. So I'm
raising
a missionary.
100% of your support.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow, awesome. Tell us about the ministry that you do on campuses. What does it look like? How do you get started?
Yeah. So basically, you go look for a school. You go look for a school, and you figure out how to get recognized by the school. You find students, and so when I first started, I was at UCI, and
That's
you go
UC
looking.
Irvine.
Oh, UC Irvine, yeah,
Yeah.
for people who aren't from California. So I just was asking people if they knew any students at UCI who wanted to be a part of this club. And then you build relationships with the other Christian clubs on campus. And through that, we formed a club. And so in the clubs, we talk about evidences for Christianity, historical, scientific, philosophical, and also at the same time, we want to share our faith with people who don't believe what we believe and just kind of bring them on in a conversation where they could ask all the questions they want.
What does the outreach side of your ministry look like?
Oh, so we do outreach at, I'm at various schools. So we try to do it out in an open area where there's grass, and we just put out blankets and snacks and signs, and we say this is the Deep Questions Club, and you could come and ask whatever you want to ask. And every week we get new people, and they're just ready to ask questions, and a lot of it naturally goes into God and just things about God and spirituality and religion. So it's just a good way for people to be exposed to a Christian worldview.
So what I want people to understand, and we're showing a little B-roll here on the show of your Deep Questions Club, as you call it. You just kind of set up a tarp in a free speech zone on the campus. You have some food, and
Yep.
Students walk by and they just start talking about questions, and then that inevitably leads to deeper conversations that are usually sort of philosophical or spiritual.
Yep. And it just naturally goes that way. We don't even try to push it in that direction. It just naturally goes there.
Do most of the young people who stop by, do you find that most of them are unchurched or have some kind of experience with the church and with faith?
It's a mixed bag. Yeah, but definitely a lot of students are non-religious. So people who have never been to church. You get those students who are spiritual but not religious. So people just trying to figure it out on their own. And then you meet some students who might have had some exposure to Christianity, but it's really mixed up.
So when they stop and talk to you, how would you characterize the worldview beliefs of the average student that comes by and speaks to you? Like, if you might describe, like, what is their belief about reality and morality? Like, how might you just kind of walk us through what their major belief system is?
A lot of them are just trying to figure it out as they go. A lot of kids want to say they're spiritual. So in the past, a lot more students were more atheistic, but I think atheism and materialism has just kind of left them empty, and they want to know that there's something bigger than them. So I think that's why a lot of people just generally gravitate towards spirituality in general.
So they're kind of looking for something spiritual, but not necessarily an organized religion.
Exactly.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the most common questions that you get about Christianity?
Oh, it's like, why are Christians hypocrites? Why do they do all these bad things in the name of God? So a lot of the questions, if they're asking questions about Christianity, are usually the misunderstandings or misconceptions of it. So, yep, that's a lot of people don't generally just come in and start asking about Christianity. It's usually a more general question that leads into religion, and then that's how Christianity comes into the conversation.
Do you notice a certain theme? Because if most of the people that stop by aren't asking about Christianity, is there a theme to what they are asking about?
A lot of them like to ask about the meaning of life, what happens when we die, how do you live your life? A lot of the students kind of are looking for guidance and wisdom and knowledge, and some of the questions I got is, how do you acquire wisdom? How do you acquire knowledge? And a lot of the times we talk about truth or morality.
So we have a viewer who has a question for you, Jane. Rhyme His Songs, who's a frequent viewer of the show, wants to know, what is the key issue of Gen Z's spirituality? Like, what is it that they believe spiritually? Do they just kind of come in and they're just sort of ambiguous, or are they New Age, or what do you see from them spiritually?
Yeah, I think spirituality, it always, when you meet with them, it kind of sounds New Agey. It's just like kind of like they want to know that there's just something besides this world, or there's something supernatural that's around them. So we hear students who talk about, can we talk about drugs on this show?
Yeah, we could talk about all. That's why it's all the things.
Okay, all the things. Yeah, this is all the things we talk about on campus. So they'll say, hey, I'm going to go out to the woods, and me and my friends are going to do all these shrooms, and it's a spiritual experience. And people talk about getting a third eye or being transplanted into another realm. And so a lot of the spirituality that we see on campus is something along the lines of that.
So I would characterize that as sort of New Age, but also somewhat opening themselves up to other kinds of spirits, not the Holy Spirit.
Maybe even the occult.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah.
I was going to say occultish.
Yeah.
So,
I'm concerned that they're going into the woods, but that's for another show. Okay.
Into the woods.
Yeah.
So, Rhyme His Songs had another question. She says, do you see that this generation is having more of a bent toward the sanctity of life or pro-life issues, or more toward pro-choice?
We actually have had lots of conversations about that. Initially, a lot of them are pro-choice. And as we have conversations with them, because a lot of them don't understand, or they don't know what goes on in abortion, and they don't know what it looks like. And we've had lots of students change their minds in one conversation because they really didn't know what an abortion was. And so I think I've heard that this generation is more pro-life than past generations. And I could see them being a lot more open whenever we talk to them. So yeah, lots of students change their mind on that position when we have conversations with them.
I'm wondering how do you navigate from I'm going in the woods to open myself up to a spiritual experience through drugs to let me tell you about the historic Christian worldview. Like how does that happen?
Well, we talk about all kinds of things. And so it's really interesting how it lands there. It just naturally gets to God in a lot of the conversations. So we don't have to be like, hey, do you know about the historical effects of Christianity? It's more like we go wherever the conversation leads, and it does get to God, and then we do get to talk about Christianity. We get to talk about Jesus, and it's just the natural way the conversation goes for us.
So kind of paint me the picture though, like what are some of the common conversations that you see? Like what are the themes that come up a lot?
Well, I could just talk about our last meeting. So we actually had a professor stop by, and he's like, what group is this? And we're like, oh, we're the Deep Questions Club. And so we were like, what question do you have? And so he started talking about artificial intelligence, and he was proposing if AI could, fix everybody's problems, would you want that? And a lot of the students actually pushed back because they believed in consciousness. So we started talking about consciousness, and, he was very materialistic, and at the same time, he was really condescending. So a lot of the students were pushing back on how condescending he was towards the students. So it was kind of interesting to see that they don't just believe what they're told, which gives me hope for this generation. They're willing to push back on some things that their professors say.
Well, since we're on that subject, I'll just give a shameless plug for my employer. We're going to, the Transhumanism book, we had Dr. Ron on several weeks ago talking about that and some of those themes and how that's kind of an alternative religion. It's an alternative that's being put forth by naturalists, but also on the artificial intelligence. We have a book that'll be coming out in a couple of years on that issue from AI from a Christian worldview standpoint. So there's definitely some things to be done there on that front, because I think that's the last best hope of the naturalist worldview. But good for the students for pushing back on some of that. So I'm going to click over so you ask a question.
I was actually wondering, do you see a lot of students moving into Christianity, or is it like that it's just the opening door, which to me I think is great, and like the word says, one person plants the seed, another person waters the seed. I'm just wondering, what does salvation look like, either in the Christian club or even in the Deep Thinkers Club?
Well, we've actually had a couple of students come to Christ this past spring, so that's pretty exciting. And, you know, with a lot of people who come to our groups, it's usually a long process. A lot of the kids that tend to come to our groups like to think a little bit more deeply, and that's what we promote. We want people to think deeply. And so, you know, it could take a year for somebody to come to Christ. We haven't seen somebody just come to Christ on the spot. Yeah. So we like to hash things out with them, you know, count the cost. This is what Christianity has to offer, and this is, are you willing to give up your life for it? And so I would rather have a student really think about it and process it and come to Christ.
That's so good, because it really highlights the relational component of evangelism, that you have to be willing to walk with people and to understand that they're coming at life from a lot of sometimes messy points of view. Yeah. And giving them time to think through things, because, you know, in the ancient church. That's
what I was going to talk about.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. You will say it much better than I will.
But in the ancient church, they started had a process of about a year of bringing a person along to see before they would really kind of call them to a conversion. There was a whole process of investigation and inquiry and questions, and because many people were coming from other pagan religions and they needed that time to think about it. And I think in scripture sometimes we only get one snapshot of like the instantaneous on the spot conversion, but there in the ancient church there was also this slower path. And that's really interesting to me, that you're finding a very creative way of giving them time and space to think about things.
So I kind of want to switch gears a little bit and start talking about the Gen Z generation, like in a more specific way, and especially the younger side of it. What are some things that you think millennials and Gen Xers miss or misunderstand about people who are, or young people who are Gen Zs?
Well, I think a lot of people think that Gen Z kids are just always on their phones. So, I mean, they are the first generation to fully grow up on the internet and social media. And they think, you know, they're socially awkward, or they don't like talking to people. But like, we've been on campus and everybody has earbuds on, everybody's on their phones, and you kind of are like, oh, they're never going to talk to us because they're just glued to their phones. So we actually tried something on campus, and we just went up to people who had earbuds and we tried to start conversations with them, and they actually did. So there is hope for them, because they aren't just going to be on their phone. They're willing to talk to people too. So that's a lot of people just think they're just glued to their phone all the time. But I think if you have something valuable to talk to them about, I think they're willing to put their phone aside to chat with you.
I think it's interesting, a comment you made earlier, that they're really looking for wisdom. And in the internet age, there's a lot of information, but there's not necessarily a lot of wisdom.
Doesn't equate. Yeah.
And that's interesting that they perceive that. Another one of our viewers, Rhyme His Songs, has another question. So can you begin by asking a question, like to zero in on their interests? Is there a best way to lead them into a conversation? What might I ask them? Should I have like some frequently asked questions, or like what's the best way to start engaging with someone in a Gen Z context?
What's been working for us is, these kids come to our groups and they ask us, what are you talking about? And we're talking about whatever you want to talk about. You could ask whatever question you want. So I think just letting them ask the questions first will give you an idea of where they're at, and you could go from there.
I think that's a good point. I remember working with youth and people in church feeling like young people need to act this way, they need to speak this way and have these questions and conversations. And what I hear you saying is just be open and meet people where they are. And that will kind of organically lend itself to building relationships so that you can have an organic conversation about faith and about Christ.
Mm-hmm.
So do you kind of combine like an evidence-based approach through apologetics with, prayer or personal testimony, or how do you, what sort of is your strategy there?
So we just have conversations with how you would regularly have conversations with friends. And so as the conversations develop, you could see people starting to have questions where you could actually use your apologetics. And that's when a lot of students are like, I've never heard of this before, because the Christian worldview isn't something that's going to be taught in their classroom. And so they're really shocked when they hear what Christians actually believe in. They're like, well, I never knew that. So yeah, that's when the apologetics gets in there, when you're pretty much in the conversation and have built relationships with them. Apologetics is just a really great tool with these young people.
Well, and I'd imagine that even a lot of Christian students haven't encountered a lot of apologetics in their churches growing up, because it's a pretty rare youth group where you're getting that information. Do you find that people are generally receptive when you try to bring up issues related to like the historical Jesus and that sort of thing?
Once you build relationships, people are willing to listen to you. So that's the great thing. I think maybe if you started off with, hey, did you know Jesus was a historical figure? I think that would probably make people walk the other way. But since we've been having conversations with them, it gets easier to introduce those concepts to them.
What I love about Jane's approach is that it's relationship oriented. Mm-hmm. It's like she's done all the homework, she's got the evidences, but it's not just about like a direct presentation or a talk, which is so often how you see apologetics showing up. And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to have her on the show, is because I want people to see like, no, this needs to be something that you stitch into your life. And kind of what I hope people will come away with is a couple of things in this discussion is the importance of being prepared, that, Jane's done some good work and wrestling through questions for herself and being conversant about issues, but also thinking about opportunities that are right in front of you.
Yes.
Like, I love the simplicity of your ministry, Jane, that you are really just an everyday evangelist. I mean, I know you're out there raising support and you're full-time going to 4 college campuses, but your approach is so simple of, we're just going to sit in a free speech zone and have it set up a sign and have some food and invite people to talk to us. That is a very powerful, I think, approach. And it made my mind start thinking about the kids that come in and out of my life as a mom, when my kids are bringing their friends to the house, or I have to drive them somewhere in the car. Sometimes kids come from really broken homes, and then they're hanging out with my kids. How can I start to build those relationships with them and be an opportunist in an everyday way? And that's kind of what has inspired me about knowing you, Jane.
Cool. I'm glad I could inspire somebody.
That's great. Okay, so what advice, or what would you talk to parents about and advise parents to do to reach out to the kids who may be unchurched? One of our viewers, I think it was Rhyme His Song, said, there are some 11th graders in her life who are unchurched. How do they begin that process in reaching out to them, or what are some things maybe, even if they're not beginning that process, that they should just keep in the back of their mind?
Yeah, just asking them what is your home life like? Just asking questions about them, and then let them ask you questions. And I think the thing is, we shouldn't assume things about people, because I think that's what we do as we don't want to be judgmental Christians, right? And so you just want to ask them instead of assuming, oh, well, their family's like this and this and this and that. So just getting to know them, I think, is the best thing you could do. And as time goes by, they're gonna ask you those hard questions. I mean, I have this one student, and she's a teen mom, and so I got to know her just in that first meeting, and I just asked her questions about what is it like to be a young mom, and what do you enjoy about it. And I just praised her for making that decision to keep her child at such a young age, because this culture tells you can't do it when you're that young. And so it was just really cool to have that conversation with a young person and to encourage them.
And I want to encourage the parents and grandparents out there. I mean, you're looking at two people right here at the table who both came to Christ when we were 15. Mm-hmm. And were influenced and impacted by families around us, that in our own families, home families that had various levels of brokenness, other families extended grace to us and included us in what they were doing. And that had a lasting impact in our lives. And I guess I want to encourage our viewers that if you have a great home life, think about sharing that with another person that is maybe your kid's friend who's just always hanging out there, because they're probably getting more from that experience than you realize. They're watching you, and they're watching your beliefs and what a difference that makes for you. And then maybe you're creating a safe environment for them to ask questions. We have some more viewer comments, Jane. S. Brooks says she's loving the conversation. I've often thought that if older generations would just take time to at least try to talk to younger folks, even with their earbuds in, the younger ones will appreciate it and engage. Many of them are just waiting for that attention and even mentorship. Have you found that to be true?
Yeah. So one of my colleagues, he's married with kids, and they get to ask him questions about marriage and what it's like to be a father. And so we get to step in as mentors, where, a lot of these students come from broken homes. They don't know what it's like to have a good father or a good mother, and to have, Christians who are living that out and able to tell people of their experiences. These kids are so thankful to hear stories and us to help them walk through that and try to understand what family is all about. So yeah, I think older Christians have a lot to offer to this young generation, especially because there's a lot more broken families and parents aren't really being parents to their kids anymore.
Well, let's have you kind of wrap it up here. Tell us a little bit more about the work that Ratio Christi is doing nationwide, and how some of the people that are watching might want to get connected with them.
Yeah, so we are here in the United States, but we are also in other countries as well. And so we're all establishing chapters all over the country and all over the world. And, the ways you could get involved is telling young people that we exist, and they could go to these clubs on campuses. And you could just find us on the internet at ratiochristi.org, and you could find out more where we're at and, what we're doing.
There we go. We have a little graphic up on the screen about Ratio Christi, and it's sort of like a campus ministry, like an InterVarsity chapter or Campus Crusade, but it's focused on allowing young people to really come ask their difficult questions, as well as Christian students who've maybe come from Christian homes but are now kind of wavering in their faith, having some support and some ways of getting engaged in a deeper way on what they believe and why they believe it. So Ratio Christi is a great ministry, so we are glad to have Jane here. Thank you, Jane, for doing this.
Your ministry and mission are so vital. Thank you so much.
I really
Thank
hope that
you for having me.
Yeah, I hope that people will be inspired today as a result of what you're doing. So thank you so much,
You
Jane.
just go out there and have conversations, see where it goes.
Yeah, that's right.
Be really good listeners and be gentle and respectful. And I think God will show you really, really great things.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Bye.
I think her closing point is so important. Like, just be gentle, be respectful, non-judgmental, and see what opens up. I mean, it's the exact same thing that we want, or that I know I want. I can't speak for everybody, but, gentleness, respect, please don't judge me. And let's have a conversation.
Yeah. And I think that there's we're in a cultural moment right now where we're trying to find that line of how do I engage with people in a gentle, respectful way and just non-judgmental. The way I'm understanding what you're saying there is that people come to Christ in all kinds of messy life situations. They come from broken homes. They come from abusive homes. They come from new age worldviews. They just come from all kinds of different situations and belief systems, but that we're ultimately and clearly pointing them to Christ. And that's what I love about what Jane's doing. It's not this kind of watered down progressive Christianity where we're not going to call anyone to anything. We're going to still clearly preach the gospel and give people evidences for the historic Christian faith, but on the front end, learning how to be what I call living invitation, so that people want to keep coming back for more conversation. Yeah. So I'm always triggered by the word of don't be judgmental, because it's like the whole progressive Christian, like we can't judge anyone and then we don't want to ever lead anyone to the cross.
No, I just think I had the guy named Satan or girl, whoever in my class named Satan, and their phone was named Satan. And it's like, that's where you are.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to judge you because that's where you are. What I can do is treat you with gentleness, kindness, love, respect. And
that person is Jesus.
And we will, just because you're named Satan doesn't mean I can't have a conversation with you. Doesn't mean I can't, ask questions. I don't have to, I guess, condemn you. Let's not be the condemning kind.
Let's not do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that what I really hope that people will get from this, honestly, is just, I love Jane's like an everyday hero. Mm-hmm. And I hope that people will be inspired to be everyday heroes to their kids' friends or to their grandkids, or, just to really sow into other people's lives and be a good listener, because really you don't know what a difference it makes. There were a couple of families when I was in high school and very confused and had a difficult, non-existent relationship with one of my parents, and those families that let me come over and eat dinner with them, and where the dad talked to me and asked me questions about my life or what I was interested in, that guy probably had no more idea, that he was making a difference in my life, but it showed me something different, and it helped to inspire my faith. So it makes a difference.
It does.
So
it does.
Okay.
All right.
So
how about some tweet?
Let's do the tweet
of the week.
That's right.
Tweet of the week.
I have no idea what just happened there. Hopefully we don't get a YouTube a copyright violation. What in the world?
Hi, this is me.
Okay, first of all, that's Seinfeld.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. No. We shouldn't see it again. It's quite disturbing.
He was up late doing that one night.
That's hilarious. My inner person is laughing hysterically. Okay.
Oh my word.
Shall we actually see the tweet of the week?
Okay, sure. Let's see the tweet of the week. Neil Shenvi, my fave.
Hi. If you're watching,
Oh,
hello.
yeah. If Neil Shenvi is watching this show, it's made my life. Daryl Davis, Neil tweeted this last week. Daryl Davis is an amazing man who has convinced over 200 Klansmen to repudiate their beliefs and leave the KKK. He shared on Facebook today what he was called a white supremacist by Antifa protesters. If you understand critical theory, you'll understand why.
I just first want to say, talk about everyday heroes.
I know.
Dr. Shinvi is an everyday hero. He digs deep. Him and his partner, Dr. Pat Sawyer, they dig deep into issues of critical theory, and not just the issues of critical theory, but the issues of critical theory encroaching upon the church, and why, as a Christian worldview, it is so inappropriate in the church. And so, everyday heroes, shout out to Dr. Sawyer and Dr. Shinvi, because they definitely put in the work, and they put out just information that is top quality and so informative, and written in ways that the everyday person can understand it.
Yeah.
It's not super academic, you have to understand all the data points and, X, Y, and Z in order to get to the bottom line. It's no, here it is for everyone to be able to see. So,
and we've been
shout out
having
to
we've been having a series of conversations on YouTube about critical theory, critical race theory. So we both follow both Pat Sawyer and Neil Shenvi. But what I really liked about this post was another everyday hero. I've never heard of this guy, Daryl Davis, I think is his name. And here he is talking to some Klansmen. He's a blues.
yeah, I feel like that's deep.
He's
I
a
don't
blues
know.
musician.
I don't know if I'm that strong.
But see, I'm gonna break this down. I don't know this guy. I'd love to get him on the show. If anyone knows him, give him my email. But I am just so utterly curious as to what motivates him. I'd never heard of him, so I went and found an old NPR episode where they actually interviewed him, and that's available. You can just find it on Google. It's only about 7 minutes, but he talks about the first time that he did this, and and much like Jane, that's why I loved both of these together, is another everyday hero. He's just goes and he finds these people and he makes friends with them, and he meets a lot of them through his travels as a musician. And he goes to the Deep South a lot, and he plays music, and he encounters white supremacists, white nationalists, KKK people, and he just befriends them.
I can't even. The first thing that I think about, and you would have to watch our video that's on YouTube about about Akimini Uwan's video. In one of her videos, responses, something that I've seen, she mentions that, white spaces are violent.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sorry, but if you're at a Christian conference,
Christian women's conference
with white women, that is not violent. Let me go stand in front of the cross burning KKK. Now I couldn't do it. I'm not that strong. I know I got Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and I'd be like, no, Jesus, not today. Not today. But to me, this is like either he's completely out of his mind or he's compelled by such love, and
I think it
has to be.
It has to be. I seriously wonder. I looked on his Facebook page, which is fairly public. Is he a Christian? What's motivating him? I really want to know.
So do I.
Because
look at the guy in the KKK outfit. He's looking like, do you know where you are?
Do you know who I am?
Yes.
But here's the thing about this, is Jesus says in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew chapter 5 that we are to love our enemies.
Yes.
And pray blessings for those who persecute us. Here's where my fatigue is with the critical race conversation, is that there's so much conversation about who's right and who's wrong, and it's a lot of energy about pointing the fingers and whether people are anti-racist enough or not enough and all of this stuff, and it's all very complicated in complicated terms. What I love about Daryl is that it's very simple. Is if we're gonna love people, we're gonna have to be in relationship with them. If we're gonna overcome our racial problems, we're going to have to go out and actually be friends with people. And we're
not just stand behind a podium and say these are the issues,
or on your Twitter keyboard.
Yes,
we got to stop that, because this, I mean, for all of the conversation about social justice happening on Twitter, okay, and in books and in academia, I want to know who the people are that are actually going out and talking to people like this that are their stated enemies that want to kill them.
Yes.
And going there, to me, that is much more what Christ had in mind than all of this academic theory. And earlier today, I told Monique the video I want to make, but I won't mention it here because she won't let me make it. But here's the thing.
There it is. There it is.
About critical race theory, because I just want to be done with this assignment. But this, to me, is part of the solution. This has to be part of the solution. It cannot simply be an academic conversation.
If me having to go and talk to the people in the KKK is part of the solution, I don't know if we're going to find a solution this side of heaven. Because I don't know that I'm that strong. Like, I literally love the idea. Maybe that's it. Maybe he loves it more than I do. I don't know. But I'm not that strong. Pray for me, saints. Pray for me. I need some strength. But in all seriousness, well, yeah, I need strength in all seriousness, because I don't know that I'm there. I don't know that, like, that's fear gripping to me, you know? But in reality, going back to the question of, well, how can someone call him a white supremacist?
Okay, so we'll go
that
back
was
to
the original question.
Sorry. I had the little sermon there.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know we was gonna have the picture. And I wasn't ready. I'm a little shook by that. I wasn't ready. So
how could a black person be called?
The setup is that you're either for us or you're against us. That's basically it. So if you are not siding with the thought of critical race theory, then you are participating, even if it's unknowingly, you're participating in whiteness. You're participating in the system of oppression. So because he is not, I guess, working to be against the KKK or speak out against that oppression, then he would be participating in that. And there's many different avenues in which you can say, to me, part of it is personal responsibility. And again, like, that's part of what we talk about in the videos, but that would be seen as whiteness. I am not a victim. Not holding to the victim narrative of being oppressed would be living in a pre-encounter phase and not truly being woke, so to speak.
He's not a proper woke black person.
If they're calling him a white supremacist, I would say that's probably
that's how they arrive at that conclusion.
Yeah. But check out the videos. People, check out the videos. They're so informative, and you would be surprised how the conversation of critical race theory is infiltrating the church, and it does not belong there. Let's see. We have
someone's telling me they liked my little sermon.
Oh, okay. Well, there's that.
I think that, I guess for me, after all of the 9 months or so, 10 months that we've been talking about critical race theory and all of this stuff, to me, when I saw this, I felt like this is much closer to what Christians ought to be doing. Is really this is what it means to love our enemies. This is the snapshot of what that means. loving our enemies is not a word. It can't just be a political idea. It can't just be a pretty sermon. It can't be an academic conversation. It can't just be about, well, let's parse out a whole new vocabulary on what these words are going to mean now for this group of people. No. This is what I've been trying to explain for the last 10 months is the kingdom of God subverts all of that. When you go and you love your enemies, that is what it means to display the love of Christ. Love is not a word that means like I just accept everyone's sin or that I bully them into believing my belief. It's about friendship and extension of kindness and bringing people along. There was a great story in the NPR thing that I listened to, and he was talking to this Klansman, and they'd been developing a friendship, and so they were driving in a truck somewhere together, and the Klansman says to Daryl, well, you know that all black people are inherently violent. And Daryl says, well, I've never beat anybody up in my life. What are you talking about? And he's like, well, it just hasn't come out yet. But all black people are inherently violent. This was the Klansman's belief. So Daryl, in a form of apologetics, I think, he turns it around and he says, well, did you know that all white people are genetically predisposed to being serial killers? And especially white men are predisposed to being serial killers. He's like, well, I've never killed anyone in my life. He says, yeah, well, look at Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer and all these people. They're all white. They're all white males. It just hasn't expressed itself yet. And that guy said that conversation was part of the beginning of the turnaround for him. But Daryl had to be willing to be in a significant enough relationship with this guy to go somewhere with him, to get in a truck with him, but that is what Jesus means when he says to love our enemies.
Yes.
And I think that that's a whole lot closer to the solution of racial unity and reconciliation than all of these academic conversations and all of these talking heads. Honestly.
I agree.
So
I agree. I don't know if I'm getting enough.
There's my little sermon.
Yes. Yes. Come on, Krista, preach. Yes.
All right.
No. Yeah.
You're a little unsettled.
I am. I'm like, wow. Yeah, but I mean, that's also encouraging for me personally. Like, okay, so I've come this far. Like, what else can I do? How else can I, go out and reach out to someone who believes differently than I do or thinks differently than I do? And yeah.
What does that begin to look like?
What does it look like? And what does love look like?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, thank you everyone for joining us for this conversation. I hope you were inspired tonight to be an everyday hero in your context. That was really sort of the theme of the show tonight. And I hope that you're coming away and thinking about that, and we'll get into a conversation with the Lord about who it is in what we call at our church, our oikos, our 8 to 15 people that God has strategically and supernaturally placed in your life that he wants you to be speaking into their lives. Be prepared, if you need to read some books or get prepared, learn some apologetics. There's a ton of great resources out there, podcasts, videos, all that stuff. But also don't forget to be in relationships. Yeah, that's really the big theme for tonight's show. Share the show. Click on that share button. If you are enjoying the show, if the show has ministered to you, please help us grow this ministry by helping to spread the word of what we're doing here. Also, the podcast is available on Apple Podcasts,
Google Play,
and
Spotify.
All right.
Go to Instagram and like Family210.
Yes. Support our show sponsor and check out the shirts there. You gonna play the video of the other one? Do you have that? There it is. All right. It's okay. It's just still. That's my favorite design. There on the left. It's kind of a homage to the resurrection of Christ bringing us to life.
Amen.
At the cross. So connect with us on social media. The Real Monique D on Twitter. And Theology Mom everywhere. You can connect with me. Thank you
Thanks
so much.
Everyone. See you next week.
God
Bye.
bless.
There's nothing left.